Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1392. The topic is nutrition and the title is What My Most Successful Clients Do. Wouldn't you like to know? Well, hopefully we're going to find out. So why this kind of podcast came up was one of my clients are a personal trainer. We've been working together for like a week or two now, and they're struggling a bit. They're struggling to have consistency with their nutrition. So the last week, when I looked through their Monday through Friday, they had breakfast only on 2 of the days, and they woke up late on the other days. And one of the days they said they woke up on time, but something happened and blah, 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 blah. Then they've had mid-morning snack like every single day. And that was the transition from their morning clients over to kind of their midday, which is when they train or they take care of business kind of stuff. They missed lunch twice because they had to make calls and run errands. And then their mid-afternoon snack, they've actually had that every single day. And that was because it was a transition for before their evening clients. And then after their evening clients, they missed dinner twice because they said they were just too tired to eat, so they just didn't eat. Now, the client responded, and I think a lot of people can identify with what this client just says. What they said was, I feel like my schedule is just too crazy to be consistent with my food. Now, me being me, I wrote something back that's semi-smartass, but if you've known me at this point, you'll know that I am a smartass, but I do care, and a lot of the times when I say something smart, it's more so me just trying to be funny and trying to educate at the same time, but it's also just a convenient excuse for me to be a smartass at times. But that's what they said. They said, I feel like my schedule is just too crazy to be consistent with my food. I replied, your schedule feels hectic, but it's actually pretty consistent. You wake up every day. That's consistent. You have transitions before, between, and after work. That's consistent. And you go to sleep every day. That's consistent. So you actually have a consistent schedule, you just don't have consistent habits. So of course, I'm sure they, said, okay, smartass, but that's actually kind of true for everyone, including myself, is we have a much more consistent life than we think we do. It's just the way we react to our life or the habits we've built or not built, make it feel inconsistent. They make it feel hectic. But we wake up every day. You have times before, in between, after work, and you go to bed every day. So there is some consistency to what happens between our day, like during the day. But it isn't always, we haven't built consistent habits. That's kind of the thing to focus on. The reason why I wanted him to have this focus, and we continue to talk more, was if you feel like the day is the problem, you can't control that. If you recognize that your habits are the problem, well, you can definitely control that. So I wanted him to realize that it's not out of his control that he feels hectic. It's because he's not accepting control of what he can control, and he probably doesn't even recognize he can control these things. Either that's what's creating the hectic feeling. So we got into a further discussion, and it led to us talking about what my most consistent clients do, and they are my most successful clients. So my most successful clients nutritionally, I want to talk about kind of what they do. And this is what him and I talked about. And this is the stuff that you can do. But the first part is recognizing that there is a lot of things in life outside of your control. But there also are things that we can do. And what I'm about to list is going to help, but none of it will help unless you accept that what I just said is at least in part true, that there is something you can control about it. Because then as I read through these things, you're going to say, well, maybe I can do this one. Or, I'm not really doing that. Let me try this week. You're going to be more open-minded, and you're actually going to be proactive. If you feel like there's nothing you can do to control your life, well, then you're just going to find an excuse for everything I say. So as I say these things, if you feel yourself being defensive, so if I'm like, do this, and you're like, well, I don't know, and that's your first response, then check yourself. First of all, there's probably no one around you listening that's going to care what your excuse is, so don't say it. And if you feel like you're just defensive against it, be more open-minded, because everything I'm about to tell you, people have done. They currently are doing it, and they're doing very well at it. I work with people who have ridiculous, crazy schedules. So one of my favorite examples is also one of my favorite favorite people, one of my best friends. He has 6 kids, wife, and at the time, him and I did a physique competition. He actually did 3 of them. He had 2 jobs for part of it. And it's like, holy freaking crap, can you get any more overloaded than that? And I've had people who've had crazy work schedules. You know, firefighters, police officers, nurses, teachers, whatever, like, crazy schedule you can think of where somebody's on call and or driving around everywhere. I've worked with over 3,000 people at this point. I've encountered pretty much every schedule you can encounter, and people have been able to be successful at it. I'm not saying it's easy. It sure as hell is not. And that's probably why you're struggling with it. But there are some things we can do to have better control over it, or maybe we're not going to have everything perfect all the time, but we can get more right more often, and that'll help us feel like we're moving more towards our goal. So the first thing we want to do is to know your numbers. You need to know how many calories you're supposed to have, how much protein you're supposed to have. If you don't know those things, you're always going to be kind of shooting in the dark and hoping what you're doing is working, but when it doesn't work, all of a sudden you won't know why it's not working because you feel like you're not changing anything, and you're like, I haven't done anything different. Why in the world? Blah, 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 blah. So we need to know what our calories are. You need to know what your protein is. Now, that's going to be because we need to actually kind of track those and control those. If you're the type where you're like, well, I don't want to count calories all the time, well, then say goodbye to whatever your goals are. You have to have some consistency. You have to know what you're doing to know if you're being consistent. You don't need to track calories every meal of every day for the rest of your life. But it might be helpful to track them for a little bit. So when I was younger, when I started into all this, we didn't have internet. So I bought a book that had like all the macros, like calories, grams of fat, grams of carbs, grams of protein, sodium, sugar, vitamins, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Z, all the vitamins and minerals. It was a book that had that for pretty much every food that they knew of at that time, even fast food and stuff like that. Very thick book, and I would carry that around everywhere because I'm a nerd. But I would count and track everything I was doing all day on paper, to the point where now pretty much people can tell me what they eat, and I'm going to be pretty damn accurate at how many calories and grams of fats you're eating. So I've had people tell me their diets, and I'll be like, well, it looks like you're having about 2,400 to 2,500 calories a day, roughly around 130 grams of protein. We figure it out, and bam, pretty accurate. Now that's because I did it every day for a long time. But I also have clients who do it for a little bit. Maybe they track, maybe Monday, Tuesday, they screw up Wednesday, they track Thursday, lose it on Friday and Saturday. They decide to track again on Sunday, but they track half a day. Well, if you're getting 2 to 3 days a week, that's better than 0 days a week. And you'll know what's happening on those 2 or 3 days that feels different on the other days, and start to identify more and more about what's consistent and what's inconsistent. So knowing your numbers is extremely helpful, because if you're not consistent with your calories and protein, you will not have a consistent outcome. You just got to know this stuff. Okay? Now, podcast 1232 is a nutrition podcast titled Start Here. That one will explain to you how to figure out your calories and protein needs. It's also then helpful to understand about how many calories and proteins you need per 5 to 6 hours of the day. Why is that? Well, if I know per 5 to 6 hours of the day, I need X amount of calories and X amount of protein, in my first 5 to 6 hours a day, I can know if I'm on track, or know if I'm behind or ahead. Then the next 5 to 6 hours, I can know, okay, how did I do in the past 5 to 6 hours? What do I need to adjust to make sure I'm back on track on this 5 to 6 hours? And then you have the final 5 to 6 hours of being awake, where you can make more adjustments as well. So I think that system works really well. I've had very successful clients track using that system, and just that mindset is we want to kind of have an idea of where we are throughout the day. So knowing per 5 to 6 hour block, if I have X amount of calories, X amount of protein, per block, then I'm doing well. That way you're kind of on track throughout the day. Okay? So know your numbers. That's the first thing. Next thing they all do is they have options per meal. So they know kind of good meals that are like work for them and their numbers. So for example, for breakfast, they know, okay, I have one or two kind of things I can eat at home. This is like meal one or meal two, depending on how I'm feeling that day. But maybe one is like a sit down kind of meal. Maybe one's a quicker meal. But they also have like, okay, well, if I'm on the go and I had to run out of the house, I can just grab this and run out. Maybe it's a 3-ounce pack of like almonds or cashews or something. You just grab it and go. What about like a fast food or gas station? So gas station, maybe they get a Core Power like protein drink with a pack of almonds, and then bam, that gets them at least something at that time that's cheap, easy, fast. You can run in the gas station, run back out. So they know options per meal. What about going out to eat? Well, you have a meat and vegetables. That works well. If there's something that you typically would go to because it's by your work or on the way home, or maybe you and the spouse like to go out to eat there every now and then, look up a meal on the like nutrition facts on their website. So for example, like say Chipotle, you can look up like a certain burrito or a certain bowl with certain toppings and say, okay, I know if I go there and I order this, it's about X amount of calories, X amount of protein. So I know that per restaurant. And yes, people do this. So I do this so as well. So I know if I go to certain restaurants, I know exactly what to order. I know exactly how many calories I'm going to get out of it, and how much grams of protein. And then I also know, like, for example, if my eating is hectic, I know I'm probably going to be behind in protein because that tends to be the thing that everybody struggles to eat. So I'm going to start to say, like, okay, well, today feels like craziness. I've had to eat some other weird foods. I'm probably behind in protein. So I'm going to start trying to load more protein in as I feel like I'm gaining some control throughout the day. But those are very helpful things, is knowing ahead of time what options work well for you. And that can be something that helps you build more consistency. So I had another client, for example, they had a really good breakfast on Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday, they didn't have any breakfast. Thursday, they didn't have any breakfast. Friday, they had half of what they had on Monday, but not the rest of it. And I was like, what the hell? What's going on here? And they're like, well, I just ran out of foods at home. And I'm like, you don't live in the middle of the woods. Like, it's not you're not going a 10-mile hike in Montana to try to get to the grocery store. Like, what's up? We can order foods off Amazon. You can Instacart foods, if you live in a semi, city-ish area. But there's a lot of ways to have foods available. There's also other options. So, like, for example, my wife, we order 5-ounce cans of I think it's like almonds, like honey roasted almonds or something like that, and she has those in the cabinet out by the door, so that way if we're running short somewhere, like on time, we grab a Core Power and a 5-ounce can of almonds. So she doesn't eat all 5 ounces, but she snacks on whatever she feels like. She drinks the Core Power. That's something that we literally will grab in 30 seconds as we're running out the door. So there's quick options. Knowing quick things like that are very helpful, and it's just knowing ahead of time what are common situations I'm finding myself in. What can I do to counter just totally missing my food? So if I have to have a quick breakfast, what are some options for me? If I have to eat at a gas station, what's some options for me? If I'm on the way home and I'm tired, can you stop at a grocery store and pick up like a fresh chicken? Now all of a sudden, delis will cook like whole freaking chickens, and you can just pick one up, pick up like a container of mashed potatoes, just microwave that, eat the chicken, and you're done. Like in 5 minutes, you can have a full dinner just because you stopped at the gas station for 5 minutes. So there's a lot of pre-planning we can do to try to think, okay, given the situations I find myself in, what are the options that I have available to me? So as I said with the client, I said, your schedule is actually pretty consistent, man. Like, you wake up every day. You go to the same place every day for work. Like, so wherever you're going from where you live to where you work, whatever's in between there is always going to be in between there. So if you don't get something at home, get something in between. If you have an office at your job, stick some, protein bars or some, cashews, almonds, like things in your desk somewhere. That could be a great thing just to sneak in. And then he always had time after clients. He had time before his clients in the evening. He had time before he got home. Like when he got home, he could have stuff pre-made. He could buy some stuff pre-made on his way home. So it's just deciding to say, okay, these are the situations I often find myself in. I often feel very hectic and I'm trying to respond to the moment, but I don't really know what to do. Well, if you found yourself in that same position 2, 3, 4 days, weeks, months, years in a row, it's time to start planning a little bit ahead. Say, okay, well, tomorrow it looks like I'm going to have to run around and do some errands in the middle of the day. I got to make some phone calls, but let me grab an extra package of nuts out of the cabinet at home, or let me, grab some cheese sticks. Let me pack something, from the house. If I forget something in the house, I'll stop at a gas station in the middle of all that. It's just taking that extra 1 or 2 minutes to account for the craziness, to know that you have some options, to plan ahead. Okay. The next thing my consistent and best clients do is they track every day. Now, they might miss a day here or there, but they track pretty consistently. And even though they would say, like, well, because I get this happen, somebody's like, well, I'm pretty consistent, so maybe I'll just track a couple days, and if it looks good from there, I'll just kind of go on my own. No, don't do that. Oh, my God. So how do we become adults believing our own selves? How do I get this old still thinking that I tell myself the truth? It's amazing. We lie to ourselves very well, and we very rarely call ourselves out in our own lies. It's habit. We default to things that are easy and lazy. And that's unfortunately just the way that we're made. Everyone pretty much does it. We default to things that are comfortable, even if they're stupid and they're harmful, but they're comfortable or familiar. The human brain makes no sense. But we can't trust ourselves. So it's a good idea to continue to track. So it's kind of like taking, like I joke, like taking a memory pill when you get older. You take a pill to remember, to have a good memory, but you can't remember if you take the pill, or a crazy pill. Somebody's like, I feel good, my medicine's working great, I'm not going to take it anymore. Well, you only feel good because you're taking a damn medicine. Got to keep taking the crazy medicine. But the idea is if you track and everything looks like it's consistent and you're doing well, it's probably because you're tracking it. So don't just stop tracking because your habits are going to go to crap. And if you don't believe me and you've stopped your tracking, come back to it tomorrow. Like, whenever you listen to this podcast, just start back to it, and then you're going to either lie to yourself and say, well, normally I would not do this, and this was just a random day, blah, 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 blah. But tracking ourselves keeps us on track. That's the idea. So track as many days as you can. If it's only weekdays and you take weekends off because you're, psychotic and running after your kids on some kind of sport events, whatever, do what you can. But the more days we track, the more consistent we'll be. And then also enter the foods before the end of the day. Gosh. So many times people will, like, I'll read through, like, my online clients, like, I read through my MyFitnessPal or my macros or the Berrytastic, whatever the heck else people want to use apps. I log into their accounts and I just look through, like, their days. And then I write back to them, once or twice a week saying, like, hey, I looked through, Monday was great, Tuesday was great, Wednesday kind of weird, like we kind of ended up slamming in all the food in the end of the day. So if we could try to stretch that out, that'd be great. But if you ran into some kind of, craziness in the morning, I'm glad you got it in by the end of the day. Good job. Maybe Thursday's a little low in protein. We had this snack and this snack, which made our calories high, but they were really low in protein, so it'd be better to kind of swap those out for more protein-rich things. So you just read through what they're doing and then give advice. And a lot of the clients love that because it's basically I take what they currently do and just give them small little tips and tricks that make it better. So they don't have to reinvent the wheel and learn a whole new diet and all these other crazy foods that they don't like and they don't have access to and they don't want to know how to, like, they don't know how to cook. So we just, whatever you normally do, let's just make it a smidge better. And we'll do that, and then we'll make it a smidge more better. That's kind of the process. So I love that process, but too often somebody will have the values for the day and they're all jacked up. And then when I'm like, hey, what happened on Wednesday? They're like, yeah, I entered the foods on, Wednesday night before I went to bed, or I entered the foods Thursday and I saw that it was kind of jacked up. And it's like, well, what the hell? We want to track ahead of the end of the day so we can adjust for it. If we only track at the very end of the day, we're just going to see what we screwed up. We're not going to be actually able to not screw it up. So it's better to kind of enter your foods either like the mid-afternoon or the evening, sometime before your last meal. So that way you can adjust your last meal to make sure you're on point with your numbers. This is also why it was really helpful to know the 5 to 6 hour kind of time blocks, is because if you know what you're supposed to be at per 5 to 6 hours, maybe by 2 p.m. you already know where you are. You already know you're behind, or you already know you're ahead, so you can already start making adjustments. And if you just kind of track that in your head, you know how many calories you're supposed to be having. Okay, every time I enter 6 ounces of chicken, it's this many calories, this many protein. So if I'm having chicken again for lunch, I know it's going to be that. So you'll start to be able to know what calories are in your foods and what grams of proteins are in your foods before you even enter them, because you end up entering the same damn things almost all the time. So you're going to have a lot more control. But the idea is to enter your foods and know where you are before your last meal. So that way you can adjust your last meal, hit your day on target, and be more consistent. Okay? The last thing we have here is just to focus on the process. My most consistent clients, my most successful clients, the process becomes the game. The process becomes the goal. Meaning that they're trying to perfect it, they're trying to learn about it, they're trying to like quote unquote hack it. You know, like we always talk about like life hacks for, you know, blah blah blah, whatever the hell it is. Those are kind of new now and like super popular. But the most successful people, they invest themselves into the process, and that becomes the game. That becomes the thing that they try to perfect. That becomes like, oh man, I want to, you know, learn how to make the best foods or the best meals, or I want to learn how to track my foods in this way, and I can do them instantly if I save, you know, this meal as an option 1, this meal as option 2, rather than entering the individual foods. I just go meal 1, boom, meal 2, boom, and they just enter it in. And people have gotten it to where they can do it entire days. A whole day of tracking in under 3 minutes. So you can do it very fast, and it doesn't have to take up your whole day. But what I love about it is the people invest into the process. They take the time to figure out the options that they have. Where can I eat if I'm late to work? Where can I eat if I, you know, have to go pick up, you know, my child from this place, or I have to take them to that place? You know, so they game the system. That's what they look at. They focus on what they're doing in the process, not what it's getting them. Yes, we all want results, but they don't look at like everything they're doing to get the results as like a horrible, miserable task. They're like, I am all in. I want to crush this. I want to be great at this. So that is something that is huge, 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 huge for helping them be successful, is they try to invest into the process and try to be the best they can at it. So this is what the most successful people do. This is, in a sense, what I do. So I count my calories and protein throughout the day. I have a good idea of what my calories and proteins are throughout the day. I eat early so I don't get behind in my calories and have to shove everything at the end of the day, which causes me to have greater fat percentage, even though I'm at a controlled calorie intake. And I eat early so that way I have enough protein to maintain muscle tissue and to ensure that the muscle damage I created in yesterday's workout is actually turning into new muscle tissue. So I don't want to be freaking behind in protein all day, because then I'm not building any new muscle. It's just freaking wasting my workouts. So I make sure I eat early calorie-wise. I eat early protein-wise. I eat often so that my body has what it needs. So that way it doesn't try to form body fat from huge, you know, pockets of the day where I'm underfed. It doesn't miss out on muscle growth because I'm not eating the protein. So, and then when I eat more, when I move more, I eat a little more. When I move less, I eat a little less. Again, this helps balance my caloric intake to help control fat formation. It helps balance my protein intake, so that way I'm always maintaining and building new muscle. This is how I stay at 280 pounds, and they can see kind of like the lines of my abs. I'm not, you know, six-pack abs on the beach anytime soon here, but they're good. Like, I don't have a belly over my waist or anything at 280, and this allows me to eat kind of a little haphazard from time to time based on schedule and food availability and, you know, whatever business throws at me, whatever life throws at me. You know, I have an insanely more hectic day than I had years and years ago when I thought I had the most hectic day. So it's just, as you progress in life, as you continue to try to become more successful, you tend to take on more and more challenges, and you have to learn how to become more and more efficient in what you do. And that has allowed me, like eating and paying attention to these details throughout the day, it's allowed me to not only progress in my business, but progress in the relationship. So I'm married now and super blessed about that and love it. I also am progressing in my physical health. So I look leaner and I'm bigger muscles than I've ever been in my entire life. And it's able to do all of those things at one time because I do pay attention to everything a little bit throughout the day, all day, in all areas of my life. And you kind of know the minimums, you know how to adjust, you know how to move with things, and that helps just build more and more consistency. More consistency allows you to reach better and better progress, better results over time, rather than having these big swings. So, if you feel like that client feels, if you've said to yourself, I feel like my schedule is just too crazy to be consistent with my food, how do we control that? Is to know your numbers. Listen to podcast 1232, Nutrition, start here. That's the title of the podcast. Know your numbers, know your calories, know your protein. Know options for each meal. So if I'm going to eat breakfast, what are 1 or 2 breakfasts I can eat, whether it's at home or on the go? Same for lunch, same for dinner, same for your midday meals. Track every day. And check where you are throughout the day. So check yourself before you wreck yourself, okay? So you want to check yourself before the last meal of the day, so that way you can adjust the last meal of the day and still hit your targets. This can be done, and it's literally being done by dozens and dozens and dozens of clients. So people can do this. It's not easy. It does take some attention to detail. You do have to, I have one client, definitely not going to say his name, but he has a habit where about a half mile before he gets home, he pulls off on the side, like at his, I don't know what it is, like gas station or grocery store or something, but he pulls off and he enters his food data and stuff before he gets home, because he said, once I get home, it's like a free-for-all, and like once I get through the door, often I don't know what's happening until like 11 at night, and I'm passed out and for bed. So he said that he's found himself to be much more consistent if he makes that little pit stop before he gets home. Definitely not going to say that because I don't know if the significant other is sitting at home waiting for him, and but like, what the hell, that kind of thing. But that's what he does. So he knows what he needs. So he stops, takes a couple minutes, gets it done, so that way he can be consistent with his goal. That whole concept of fill your cup first. If he's taking care of his physical health, then he's going to show up at home, maybe a couple minutes late, but he's going to show up at home in a good mood. He's going to feel physically good because he ate well throughout the day. He's going to be kind of getting stronger, feeling better with himself. I mean, it's going to go so much better in all of his relationships, with spouse, with kids, just, everywhere in his life. If he's taking care of himself, he has a better self to give to everyone else. And that is challenging to do, but it can be done, and it's good for you to do, so I would say work on it. But these are the things that my most successful clients do. I hope that you can try some of these things. If you have any trouble with them, just reach out or email us brutalirongym@gmail.com. I'll be happy to discuss anything and help give you ideas from what I see from the clients that are the most successful. Awesome. Well, thank you for listening to the podcast. I do hope that there's always something you can take away from the podcast to help you live a healthier and happier life. And I appreciate it if you share the podcast in any way whatsoever, so that way we help other people live healthier and happier lives. So you can share it on social media. You can share it in a conversation with a friend. However you share it, I appreciate that you share it, and I'm sure they will as well. Thank you to the patrons of the podcast, the people who financially support the podcast, which you can do on our website at www.brutalirongym.com. You can do a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every day. I would love to keep it daily, and I'd love to keep it for free. So I appreciate the financial support, so this makes more sense to do than what it used to. So I really appreciate everybody's support. Thank you very much. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything that you want to know, let us know at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.